I want to start by saying that I live a pretty straight-edge life. I don't drink, I don't use drugs, and I've never experienced anything that would make me question my grip on reality. So when I say that what happened to me last New Year's Eve was real, I mean it. It wasn't some hallucination or alcohol-induced confusion. I saw it, I heard it, and I can't explain it. I live on the edge of a small southern town, the kind people imagine when they think of quiet streets and familiar faces. A few of my friends live even farther out, down isolated back roads that cut through heavy woods and open countryside. One of those friends is Darren. His family owns a large house in one of the nicer neighborhoods around here, but the only way to reach it is by driving several miles along those dark, winding country roads. Every New Year's Eve, Darren's family hosts a big gathering at their house. Friends of the family, neighbors, and people like me are always invited. It's usually a great time, so I look forward to receiving the formal invitation in the mail each year. Winter in the South can be unpredictable. That year, it stayed fairly mild until just a few days before New Year's, when the temperature suddenly dropped. I still remember how sharp and cold the air felt that night. The rough, uneven country road made the drive uncomfortable, especially with the freezing wind pressing against the car. I normally avoid using my high beams because I hate how blinding they can be for other drivers. But that night, the darkness of the narrow, twisting road made them necessary. The trees on both sides were thick and close together, forming a wall of shadows that made it difficult to see what lay ahead, even with the brighter lights on. There aren't any houses between the highway turnoff and Darren's neighborhood, except for one small shack setback from the road. It looks abandoned, like it's been empty for years. The wood is worn, the structure barely holding together. And yet, every now and then, I could swear I saw lights glowing faintly inside. A few minutes into the drive, during a rare straight stretch of that lonely road, my headlights caught something ahead between the trees. Something pale. Something that didn't belong there. As I got closer, I realized it was the outline of a person standing on the side of the road. She wasn't moving. She wasn't trying to hide. She was just standing there, perfectly still, her back almost touching the tree line. It was a woman, dressed in what looked like a long white gown, completely inappropriate for the freezing temperature that night. I kept my high beams on out of instinct, so the glare reflecting off the white fabric made it impossible to see her face clearly. When I passed her, I felt a strange sense of relief that she hadn't stepped into the road and forced me to stop. But only seconds later, doubt crept in. Should I have stopped? What if she needed help? Maybe she was heading to Darren's party and her car had broken down. That thought lingered until I glanced into my rearview mirror. In the dim red glow of my brake lights, I saw her again. She hadn't taken a single step, but her body had turned, slowly pivoted, so that she was now facing my car as it drove away, still completely motionless. A chill crawled up my spine. In that moment, I was strangely grateful that I'm not the best example of a good Samaritan. There was no way that woman was just another party guest. I reached Darren's house around 8 p.m. without anything else happening. Cars filled the gravel circle in front of the house, which sat in a wide clearing surrounded by dense forest, just like the other spaced-out homes in the neighborhood. The party went on as usual. Music, laughter, fireworks. We watched the ball drop in New York and then counted down again for our own time zone. After midnight, people slowly began heading home. I stayed behind to help clean up, like I normally do. I'm close with Darren's family, so it just felt right. By the time I finally left, my car was the only one remaining in front of the house. When I started the engine, a low tire pressure warning light came on. My car's older, so it didn't tell me which tire was low, just that something was wrong. At first, I wasn't too worried. This always seems to happen when the weather suddenly turns cold after a warm stretch. I figured I'd make it home without any problems. But before pulling away, I remembered the woman. Was she still out there somewhere? Had anyone else seen her? There was another route I could have taken to avoid that road, but it would have added at least 20 minutes to the drive, and that late at night, with possible drunk drivers out, I didn't want to risk it. So I chose the same road. I really wish I hadn't. Just a few minutes after turning onto that dark stretch again, I felt it. Something was wrong. I could hear it too, a harsh grinding sound, like metal dragging against asphalt. My car slowed, then rolled to a complete stop. This isn't just low pressure, I muttered under my breath. For a split second, a ridiculous thought crossed my mind. Did my tires actually fall off? Against my better judgment, I stepped out of the car to check. Without thinking, I shut the engine off. The headlights died instantly, and I was swallowed by the thick, suffocating darkness of the forest. Using my phone's flashlight, I walked around the car. My heart dropped. Every single tire had been destroyed. Not just flat, shredded, torn apart like something with claws had ripped into them. I tried to reason with myself. Maybe one tire blew out, and the rough road caused more damage. But all four? That wasn't an accident. That was deliberate. I stood there, helpless. No one drives this road at this hour, not even on New Year's Eve. I'd have to call a tow truck or someone to pick me up. Except there was no signal out here. Of course there wasn't. Just as I turned back toward the car, something changed. The wind that had been gently rustling the trees suddenly stopped. The bare branches froze in place. Even the distant sounds of wildlife faded into nothing. I had never heard silence like that before. It wasn't normal silence. It felt wrong, like the world had paused. I stood there, unable to move, and then I heard it, a slow, deliberate sound coming from somewhere behind me. A sharp crack echoed from somewhere deep within the trees, the unmistakable snap of a twig under pressure. Something was out there. Without thinking, I killed the flashlight on my phone, letting the darkness swallow me whole. The leaves continued to shift and crunch, slow and deliberate, like footsteps circling through the forest floor. I tried to reason with myself. A squirrel, maybe a deer. No, this wasn't random movement. This was the kind of silence prey falls into when a predator is near. Then I heard it. I see you. The words floated through the darkness, soft and almost gentle. My stomach dropped. Every bit of air left my lungs. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. It was a woman's voice, calm, quiet, coming from no more than 15 feet away inside the black tree line. There was no anger in it, no shouting, and somehow that made it infinitely worse. For a split second, I wanted to collapse onto the cold pavement and just disappear. Then she spoke again. "Can you see me?" That's when my fight or flight finally kicked in, except I felt frozen, completely disoriented in the dark. If I was going to run, I needed to know where I was going. With shaking hands, I turned my flashlight back on and aimed it straight ahead. She was standing right there at the edge of the trees, the woman in the white gown. This time, I could see her clearly. The dress was filthy, streaked with dirt and dark stains. Her skin was unnaturally pale, her body thin to the point of looking fragile. Tangled gray hair hung down nearly to her elbows. But her face, it was almost impossible to process. Twisted, grotesque, as if part of her lower jaw was missing, and yet her lips stretched upward in what looked like a sick, broken smile. I kept the light trained on her for a few seconds too long, paralyzed by disbelief. Then I ran. I bolted down the road toward Darren's house. The abandoned shack I'd passed earlier was technically closer in the opposite direction, but a terrifying thought hit me. What if that's where she came from? I didn't stop to consider it further. Behind me, I heard branches snapping and leaves thrashing. She was chasing me. Adrenaline carried me faster than I thought possible. Somehow, I managed to lose the sound of her pursuit and stumbled back into Darren's neighborhood. Ignoring the other houses, I sprinted straight to his front door and pounded on it, shouting for someone to open up. His mom answered and immediately pulled me inside when she saw the state I was in. Between gasps, I told her everything. Darren and his dad joined us, listening carefully. They didn't laugh. They didn't dismiss it. They offered to let me stay the night while they called the police and a towing service. I accepted without hesitation. Officers said they would search the road and that I could retrieve my car and file a statement the next day. For the moment, all I wanted was sleep, to forget the entire nightmare. But the night wasn't finished. I woke suddenly to a faint tapping sound against the second-floor window. I glanced at the digital clock on the nightstand. 3:14 a.m. The windows in the guest room had no blinds. I refused to look outside until I heard that same muffled voice drift through the glass. "I see you." She had followed me. She'd chased me all the way here. A small object hit the window again, probably a pebble. She was trying to make me look. I didn't move. I didn't leave the bed. I didn't sleep again until sunlight finally crept through the room. By morning, she was gone. When we checked the yard together before the police arrived, Darren's dad found a large, rusted knife in the grass near where I'd heard her voice. It didn't belong to anyone in the house, which meant she hadn't just attacked my tires randomly. She had followed my car to the party. She had waited. One of the other guests later admitted they'd seen someone in a white dress wandering outside earlier that night, but assumed it was just another visitor coming or going. Police searched the shack along the road after I mentioned it. No one was living there, but they did find animal remains scattered through the woods nearby. The woman was never found. What haunts me most isn't just how far she tracked me down after I left. It's this: if part of her jaw was missing, how did she speak so clearly? I repeated myself, louder this time, telling him that was my exit. He muttered an apology and said he'd grab the next one. I leaned forward slightly, trying to see his GPS screen to make sure he had actually typed in the correct address, but it was tilted just enough that I couldn't read it. The next exit was about a mile ahead. By then I was sitting upright, alert. As we approached it, I said clearly, "You need to get off here." Without responding, he flicked on his blinker and took the exit. In the rear-view mirror, I caught him staring at me for a second. There was something in his expression, maybe irritation, before he quickly looked back at the road. Less than a minute later, he asked, "Do you have a boyfriend?" I answered immediately, "Yes, he lives with me." I saw his eyes shift toward me again in the mirror. I think he noticed how fast I responded. Then he asked what my boyfriend's name was. That was it. I told him I was going to put my headphones in. I slipped my AirPods into my ears even though they were almost dead. I didn't play anything. I just wanted an excuse to stop the conversation. Asking for my boyfriend's name felt invasive, like he was testing me. Quietly, I texted my family and a few close friends about the situation and shared my location, just in case. We were back on familiar roads in my town now. It was close to 1 a.m., so the streets were empty. At the first red light after the highway, I glanced up into the mirror. He was staring at me again. Not casually, not curious, just staring. The light turned green, and he didn't move. I had to tell him it was green before he finally pressed the gas. Only my older brother responded to my texts. Unfortunately, he lives 2 hours away. He told me if I felt unsafe, I should leave the car the first chance I got. At the next red light, I noticed a police cruiser parked in a nearly empty lot nearby. Without overthinking it, I grabbed my bag, slid the van door open, and stepped out. The driver started shouting, "What are you doing?" I heard him press something up front, probably trying to close the door automatically, but I forced it open and ran. I sprinted straight toward the police car. Instead of chasing me or demanding money, the taxi driver just drove off. That alone told me I made the right choice. I slowed down as I reached the cruiser. The officer inside had already noticed me and rolled down his window. I explained that the driver had been making me uncomfortable, and I left because I didn't feel safe. I asked if he could take me home. Thankfully, he agreed. Within about 10 minutes, I was back at my apartment. I rushed inside, locked the door, and went straight to brush my teeth before collapsing into bed. But just as I got comfortable, there was a knock at my front door. My heart stopped. What if it was the taxi driver? He had my address. What if he came back for payment? Or worse, the knocking continued for a few minutes, then stopped. A few minutes later, it started again. I didn't leave my bedroom. I stayed perfectly still. The door was locked. That's what mattered. Eventually, it went quiet, and exhaustion pulled me under. The next day, I had a slightly later shift at work, which I was grateful for. While I was there, I got a call from my next-door neighbor, George. He said my dad had apparently stopped by earlier trying to get into my apartment, but didn't have a key. George wanted to confirm that I was expecting him. I told him no. He mentioned the man had been peering through the windows, which caught his attention. After thanking him, I called my dad. As expected, he was at work and had never come by my apartment. That's when I told him everything about the taxi driver again, this time over the phone. He insisted I come stay with my family for a few days. I agreed. I just needed to pack first. That night, around 9 p.m., I got home and started gathering clothes and work essentials. I finished some laundry from the night before and packed a bag, but something felt off. I've never been nervous about being alone. ever. Yet that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't. At first, I told myself it was just leftover anxiety from the taxi situation. But then I started noticing faint sounds, tiny creaks in the wooden floor, like subtle pressure shifting from someone's weight. I froze, listening. The apartment was supposed to be empty, and yet it didn't feel that way. I couldn't even tell where the noises were coming from anymore. At that point, I was completely inside my own head, scaring myself. I rushed to grab the rest of my things, telling myself I just needed to leave. I was seconds away from walking out the door when I heard it, a slow creak from down the hallway. It came from the direction of the spare bedroom. I turned, and that's when I heard a voice. "I'm not going to hurt you." My blood ran cold. An arm slowly slid into view from behind the corner of the wall, like whoever it belonged to was about to step out. I didn't wait to see his face. I bolted. I ran straight for the front door and out into the hallway of the building, screaming. I pounded on my neighbor George's door as hard as I could. Thankfully, it was still early enough that he and his wife were awake. They rushed out, alarmed, and I begged them to call for help. Instead of going back inside my apartment, we called 911 and waited outside until officers arrived. My place wasn't very large, so it didn't take them long to clear every closet, corner, and hiding spot. That's when they found it. The sliding back door that led to the shared backyard was wide open. Whoever had been inside had fled that way. The worst part? I had no official record of the taxi ride. I didn't book it through an app. I didn't have a plate number, a cab ID, nothing. All I could tell police was that it was a yellow minivan and describe the driver as best as I could. I did give them the approximate route we took and the time we entered town, hoping maybe nearby businesses had security cameras facing the road. After they finished taking my statement, I grabbed my already packed bags and drove straight to my parents' house. I stayed there for a week. They wanted me to stay longer, but eventually I had to return. Before I moved back in, my dad helped me install security cameras on both the front and back doors. I also bought a taser and kept it next to my bed. I've thankfully never had to use it. Since then, I've lived in 2 different apartments. Nothing like that has happened again. But I don't take taxis alone anymore, not ones that aren't tracked through an app. At least with rideshare services, there's a digital record, a name, a vehicle, a plate number. To this day, I still wonder, was he even a real taxi driver, or was that van stolen?